Okay, we're going to do a little unboxing. So most of you probably got this kit because it's what I recommended. You'll need to unwrap this eraser. It won't work without with the plastic on it, and unwrap this eraser. We're mostly going to be using these drawing pencils, but I'll show you how these charcoal pencils come in handy. And then this is just kind of a cool graphite pencil that's quite dark. It's an 8B. Which I'll show you why that might come in handy too. And then very important is your pencil sharpeners. So you will need to keep your pencil sharp. You'll see why. It's not exactly why you expected. And I would recommend getting a box like this so that when you're sharpening, it doesn't have to be this big. I just couldn't find a smaller box. When you're sharpening, you don't make your mom mad at me and you. These are very nice sharpeners I'm just discovering right now. So keep a box on hand for your sharpening so that you don't get us into trouble. Okay. So onto the drawing pencils. So that's the range of pencil hardnesses in this set. If you have a different set, it might be slightly different. If you got your pencils from me, I think I don't bother buying an H and a B. So you'll have, and I do give you a 9B. So you'll have a different set. And actually, we'll take a look at that 8B graphite pencil in this set too, because it is kind of important. All right. So this is this medieval system that was developed of pencil grades. Literally, it's medieval and it's never been updated, and it's kind of a weird code. But if you think of the HB as the center mid-grade pencil, which is actually very much like a number 2 pencil in grade. Then as it goes up in Bs, they get softer and darker. As it goes up in Hs, they get harder and lighter. Okay? So we've been using the 4H quite a bit because it's our hardest, lightest pencil. So when we're sketching lightly like this, it's very easy to erase. But as you know, since it's hard, if you press hard, then it's going to make a groove in the paper. Way up at the H8B, it's the softest, darkest one. So it's very easy to get really nice dark darks. Whereas with the 4H, I can't really get a dark. It just kind of turns gray, dark gray, kind of silvery almost when I work with it. So what I'd like you to do is just try these out by making a little swatch of each, starting with the 4H. So, and you're going to learn how to hold a drawing pencil now if you haven't already. So when you're shading, you're going to always be using the side of your pencil. This is the key. You can't really shade with the tip of your pencil because it makes lines, and your shading will look like lines. We want to look like you've rubbed the shading into the paper. So you'll need to hold your pencil so you can work with it on your side. And that's why sharpening is important too, because if it's stubby, you need a lot of real estate here. You need a lot of pencil tip to work with it on the side. So if it starts getting stubby, then you get tempted to use the tip. So sharpen it up, and I'll review that over and over again. You'll see. So in order to use the side of the pencil, you're going to need to go way up on the pencil. This is the way you hold your pencil to make very fine things like when you're writing a letter. It would be hard to write a letter from the back of my pencil, much harder to control that, but you don't need as much control this way. What you need to be able to use is the side of your pencil. If you try to do that like this, by the end of the next couple of weeks, you will probably be at the physical therapist for wrist exercises because you're going to have horrible wrist pain. So go back on your pencil, and you're just making short, even strokes with the side of your pencil. So what I'd like you to do first is just to see how each of these pencils work. Just make a little swatch with it, just like that. And then write down the type. And then another one, and I'll do them all, and then I will start a new recording. Okay, so now we're going to put this to work to draw what's called a value scale. Even experienced artists will often, when they're drawing something like this, will often draw a value scale just as something to sort of get them warmed up. But for all of you, it's going to be an introduction to how to work with drawing pencils. And even though for those of you who have some experience, it'll just be some practice, and there'll probably be some things I tell you that that'll be new to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a series of squares. We're just going to leave one white, and then we're going to make a light gray and a medium light gray and a medium gray and a dark gray and a really almost black. All right. So in order to do this, I think the easiest way is just to take a ruler and then just make a strip. That's the width of the ruler. My world ruler is wandering around while I do this. Okay. And then I'm just going to take the ruler and I'm going to make squares with it. So I'm just going to, you don't have to measure anything. I'm just making each square the width of the ruler. So now I'm lining up the ruler with the last square. Okay. And you're going to be doing a lot of this kind of work in this assignment. And I have to tell you, when I was a graphic designer, a lot of my days were spent just drawing grids and lines. So it is part of the life of an artist and designer, is doing this kind of work. So it's not a total waste of time. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to so we're going to leave this one white, and then we're going to fill in each one of these squares. And I'm going to suggest filling these in 2H, HB, 2B, 4B, and then 6B, 8B, 9B. Just sort of depends what your darkest pencil is. I wrote 4, 6, okay? And then again, so the 4H really is for sketching. It's not really for making grays. It's pretty hard to, it's so hard, it's just hard to work with on its side. So I'm going to start with the 2H. So the temptation is, here, I'll just make a quick one of these. That's just to show you the temptation. The temptation is to go like this, right? Like when you were a little kid and you were coloring in a square, and then you go, maybe, I don't know, keep going like this. And you know, I see this in class. I see people doing this stuff, even after I've explained it. So don't do it. You'll just be wasting your time. I'll probably make you redo this. And if the lesson you need to learn is to redo this a couple times till you get it right, you can't really move on until you have this basic skill, and there's just no point in doing this project until you have the basic skill. So I may have people do it twice. So what you want to do is, instead of going around the edges, you want to just start in a corner and just really move your pencil slowly in that corner. Okay. I'm drawing a little darker than I normally would, just because otherwise I'm afraid you're not going to be able to see it. So notice what I'm doing. Every little movement of my pencil is incredibly short, and they're all staying in the same direction. So you can barely see the lines here. And if I see a little bit of a blank space, I'm just going back over it, right? So you're also going back and forth over where you've already been to fill in any spaces. So you're working incredibly small here. So it's going to take me a good few minutes to fill in the square. I won't make you watch it. I will fast forward at this point, but don't. So your left brain is just like, fill it with gray, right? Your strokes should not be that long. If they are, I'm going to send this back to you and I'm going to say shorter, even strokes, right? So it should look like you rubbed the pencil in. You use such short, beautiful strokes that the strokes basically disappear. All right. And, you know, they don't have to be perfect this time, but I want to see you're at least making progress in that direction. All right, so I will fast forward from here. Systems. So I just noticed I started out in what was supposed to be the white square, so it doesn't really matter. Don't really need a white square. I just like you to have that reference. So if you followed along with me and filled in your white square first, don't worry about it. I just changed these so that this is 2H, that's HB, this is 2B, 4B, and then this is just going to be the white square here. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so now that I've done that one, I'm going to move on to my HB. And you'll see, because this is a darker pencil, it will just naturally make a darker gray. And in fact, not everyone uses the same pencils, and people don't use like 12 different pencils. They typically use 4 or 5 that they really like. So if you press reasonably kind of hard, you're probably going to want to stick with the 2H for this square and just press a little bit harder. Okay. If you want to press gently like I am right now, it's a little easier to press gently, easier on your wrist as always. If you want to press a little more gently, then I think the HB is the way to go. So now I'm moving on to the 2B. Please try to keep these tight within the squares. That is a skill within itself. So you're not developing one of the skills I want you to learn if you don't keep them reasonably tight within the squares. And you'll notice as the pencils get softer, it gets easier to make a less scratchy surface too. I think you'll notice as they're softer, it's really easier to get that perfect soft blended look. Okay. And I would be moving slowly if this was really something I was making that I super cared about. I'd move a little slower because it's just a little bit scratchy. And now on to the 4B. So here I really want to start getting dark. Again, this is the model. And you could print this out if you want to look at it while you're working. I usually have this up in class while people are working. And when you go to these darker shades, you might notice it's a little harder to make it perfectly even though it's not scratchy. And you're going to need to press a little harder. So you're going to just find ways to hold your pencil that makes it work for you to press a little harder. I'm just increasing, I think I'm just increasing, I don't even know what I do, you know what I mean? I'm just increasing the angle, I think, to get this a little bit darker. And again, if your pencil starts getting stubby and you don't have enough pencil real estate to work with to make work on its side, remember that your sharpener is your best friend. So I'm still good. This particular set, they were good, and they didn't sharpen these like number 2 pencils. They sharpened them, so there's actually quite a bit of tip. So if you don't have much tip, use your sharpener. Like I said, preferably you're going to use something darker than a 6B for this one because you want to get this almost black. But what you will notice is there's always, if you're using drawing paper, which you should be using, there's always going to be a little bit of the texture of the drawing paper behind, and that's just something that's part of drawing. Some of my students obsess over this and they hate the little white spots, but that's just part of a drawing, and people don't look at drawings up from, like 2 inches in front of their face, so it all just kind of blends in to look like a solid black. But some of my students, they want to get rid of those solid blacks, and I'll show you what happens if you do that. So see what happens when I use the tip? It leaves behind that little scratchy line texture instead of, and yeah, I mean, it's completely black now, but it's black with that weird texture. So please continue to use the side of your pencil. You can press reasonably hard, and you can do this with a 6B pencil too, but try it with the 8B if you have one, or 9B. The 6B just won't ever get you quite the level of black that you want. With this one, notice I can use longer strokes in the middle because it's so soft. And I'm just going to go over everything to just make it more even. The darker the pencil you use, the easier it is, I think, to make a nice, smooth, even texture. Okay, so that's my value scale, except for the weird, ugly, scratchy part.